This week on the Deep Leadership Podcast.
Before you can become a leader, you have to be a leader.
Hmm.
And so I think, middle management, while it is a leadership position, it's a stepping ground for senior leadership. It gives you a chance to really become a senior leader before you actually get promoted into one of those roles. And so what does that even mean? It's like leading yourself, leading others, and what skills, what things do you have to learn and grow into to be able to do those things right there?
This episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, the official coffee of the Deep Leadership Podcast. Salty Sailor is a veteran-owned coffee brand on a mission to deliver premium, fresh roasted coffee while making a positive impact in the world. Their motto is drink coffee and do good, which reflects their commitment to making amazing coffee and actively supporting the military community. 10% of every order goes to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, an organization dedicated to helping sailors, Marines, and their families in times of need. All our listeners get 10% off every order of their amazing coffee by using the discount code DEEP at checkout. So check them out at saltysailorcoffee.com. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Patrick McGuire. Patrick is an IT director, life coach, martial artist, and yoga instructor. In his leadership roles, he has successfully navigated the complexities of technology management and team leadership in a fast-moving company. He also has a passion for personal development and helping others, which he does through his life coaching programs. He has more than 200 hours of yoga training and has earned a black belt in Kung Fu, requiring thousands of hours of training and practice. In his early 20s, Patrick faced significant challenges, which fueled his commitment to personal growth and development. He is now dedicated to guiding others through life's obstacles, empowering them to become the best versions of themselves. And I'm excited to have him on the show to talk about the importance of leadership in middle management. So, Patrick, welcome to the show.
Yeah. Hi, John. Thanks for having me here today.
Yeah, it's
And
good to have you on the show. And I'm really excited to talk about this subject because I think what ends up happening is a lot of books and a lot of podcast episodes and whatever feature the CEO, the top of the company. And the truth of the matter is that there's a tremendous amount of leadership happening within companies and not necessarily at the top. And so I really wanted to get you on to talk about middle management because I think that's an essential leadership role that many of our listeners play. So let's get into it. In your words or your definitions, what is middle management and why do we need it? Why is this essential to companies?
yeah, that's a great question. I mean, clearly in large organizations, there exists layers of hierarchy, right? Let's just face it. Once a company reaches a certain size, it's impossible for a leader to go around and take the pulse of every single individual in the company. And plus, the level of complexity required to do that is just unfeasible, right? So middle management basically facilitates getting the work done and bridges the gap between the front line and the senior leadership team. I mean, given that it's a given in a large organization, what do smaller companies do, right? Maybe you've started your own business. Maybe you have a handful of employees and you've been able to handle the workload so far, but it's starting to feel a little tight. Maybe you're an expert in your field and nobody can do it as good as you can. But in order to take your business to the next level, you need to be able to step away from the day to day. You need someone who can handle certain aspects of the business so you can focus on the vision and things like customer relationships.
It makes a lot of sense. I remember I was interviewing a chief petty officer, and chief petty officers are sort of like the middle management of the Navy, right? And I was asking him, what is the role of a chief petty officer? And he said this. He said, "Well, the officers are the brains of the company," and he said, "And the workers are, are the body of the company. We're the backbone. We connect the brains to the arms and legs of the company. So we're the backbone of the company." And I really like that scenario. And I think you're saying the same thing, that middle managers represent the backbone of the company. It's how do you get a lot of things done through a lot of different people? You can't do it one person. You need to have layers to be able to help you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. I play field sports, soccer. It's kind of like the center midfielder. They bridge the gap between the offense and the defense. The keeper looks back and can see the whole field and tell everybody what's going on, but you need those connecting pieces, right?
Yeah, the connected piece is a big part of that. So, I was a middle manager for years. We were talking about before we press record. I mean, I did 22 years in corporate, and I always had bosses, and I had people working for me. So essentially, I was in middle management that whole 22 years, and it has only been the last 8 years where I'm my own boss and I don't have a boss. I have a lot of experience in middle management. When we were talking about it originally, I'm like, yeah, I really have done this for a long time, but just in your opinion, what are some of the challenges that middle managers face in companies?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're going to experience high demands from a lot of different directions, both upwards and downwards. Your bosses are going to have certain expectations from you. Your employees are going to have certain expectations from you in terms of setting the agenda, making sure that they have work lined up for them, making sure that they don't have too much work on their plate at once. And then if you're in a supporting unit, you're going to have demands from other business units as well. So it's going to come in sideways as well, and so that can lead to um, the need to really balance your priorities. And if you don't have an engaged boss above you who can help manage those priorities and make sure that you're keeping the right people happy, there could be a lot of heat coming your direction. When is this going to get done? And a lot of crying babies that you have to manage, right? So I think another thing that you're going to have is limited authority, right? And so that can lead to emotional burnout because you're basically having to persuade and influence people into um, why things should be done a certain way, what should go first. And, I think that if you're in a supporting unit, like I was, a technology department, you get the opportunity to see things across the board as a company. So in that sense, it was a challenge, but it was also a good challenge in the sense that, I think of a senior leader being somebody who has a vision higher than just their department. You're wanting to bridge the gap from multiple departments. And I think I experienced a bit of that in technology, just being like, okay, I know you want this done for this department and you want this done for this department, but it's all got to get done and it's got to work together, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
One of the things you just touched on, I think it's really important, and I think people need to understand that it's harder to be in middle management than being in upper management in a lot of ways because of, like you say, you're faced with a lot of different demands on your time, whether it's people above you, below you, or beside you. And one of the things you said, and I want to capture that, is that it's really important that you have influential leadership. You have to use influencing skills more than ever in middle management. I remember being a quality manager, and I had a small team working for me. This was in a manufacturing operation. I had a small team of testers working for me, but I was responsible for the quality of that plant. Well, the people making the product didn't report to me. So, but the only people reporting to me was a small group of testers at the end of the line, right? So my job was to influence the manufacturing teams to be able to produce good quality. And so it wasn't positional authority, right? It was influential authority that I had to use. And that is one of the harder things to do as a leader is to lead with influence, which means that you have to have really good interpersonal skills. You have to be able to negotiate well. You have to you know generate relationships with key resources within the company so that you can influence the right behaviors in the company. So much harder challenges than when you're in top management and you say, here's where we're going, and everybody goes, yes sir, right?
Mhm.
It's a whole different aspect of leadership, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, completely. Yeah, and that was potentially one that it didn't catch me by surprise, but I didn't realize the how difficult that can be, especially
Yeah.
when, because some people can be very opinionated and very passionate about their methodology or their lack thereof or their priority settings and influencing that, that can take some patience, tenacity,
Yeah,
courage.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, tenacity. Sometimes you just have to stick with it. Like water on a rock, you have to eventually wear a hole into some people to get them to change.
Well, I've seen some middle managers just say yes to everything and think,
Mm.
try to get it done and force it to get done. And what I've seen from that is mistakes that are made that actually derail the business over the long term. You go for these short term successes, and then the business is like, oh yeah, that's why we don't rush things, because you didn't think through all the dependencies and how they need to actually like come together like a nice a cog in a wheel.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point in that part of our job as middle managers is looking out for the best interests of the people that work for us, but also trying to handle the expectations from upper management and the new, they might come up with a new set of goals for the week or goals for the year. And so part of us, it's this you have to have tact in terms of pushing back on leaders when what they're asking for isn't going to be able to be done by your team. And I think that's a difficult thing, pushing back. You know Sometimes we have to do that in middle management, is push back on some of the requirements from upper management. Have you had experience with that, and what are some ideas or thoughts on that?
Yeah, tact is definitely important. I mean, yes, it's easy to, I've heard this quote before, it's easy to criticize the guitarist when you're not on stage, right? And
That's
and
it.
so right, and so it's easy to sit back and criticize your leaders, your senior leadership team. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what our capacity is. Don't they know my plate's already full? So um, this middle management position does give you the opportunity to get a taste of what that's like from above, because I sometimes will pile on too much on some of my employees, and be like, well, when are you going to have this done? Can you take this on? And really, I'm passing something along that needs to get done, but I also need to be able to block for that, and that can be challenging. Is when my team is saying, look, I'm at capacity. What do you want me to stop doing to do this new thing? And communicating that upwards. Yeah, that can, if your senior leadership team's not open to hearing that, that can be really challenging. But if you have a close relationship and the right culture in your company, it's not you versus them or us versus them. It's us. It's one team, and you work together for the best for everybody.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think I would tend to, one of the challenges I always had in middle management is I tended to maybe too aggressive in defending my team. They would say, "Oh, we've got already this, too many projects on our plate. If we do this, something's going to fall out." And so I would go back to upper management and fight for them. And sometimes I didn't see the bigger picture. I struggled with, again, I was looking out for my team and their best interest, but I wasn't necessarily thinking about the big picture of the company or why this was important. And so I think over time, I sort of, my mind was open to the idea of like, well, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe my view of the world is limited, right? And so
Mm-mm.
maybe there's a reason why they want us to do this particular project right now, immediately, and put other things in the back burner. So I think, well, for me at least, it took a while to develop an ability to see both sides. I was always the defender of the people, and to the point where I would frustrate, I think, my bosses often. They're like, "You're always
Mm.
saying no." I'm like, "Well, there's reasons for it." So they would always give me a hard time. "You're always saying no." I'm like, "Well, I just, I was looking out for my people." So there's a fine balance to be had between, the big picture and in trying to help, take care of your team.
Yeah, and that's one of the risks or challenges in itself, because you basically, by standing up for your team, you expose yourself to the senior leadership team. Maybe they just wanted you to toe the line, keep the status quo, and keep your mouth shut and just get the job done, because they already have a ton on their plate and they don't want another problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do expose yourself, like, oh, do you not have the ability to handle your department? You know,
Right, right. It's funny. I
yeah.
had a first class petty officer working for me in the Navy one time. His name was Petty Officer Gemini, and one of the things I noticed after a while working for him working for me, he would always say, "No problem, yes sir," whenever I would ask him to do something. "No problem, yes sir." And I said one time to him, I said, "You no, no matter what I say, you say no problem, yes sir." He goes, "Well, look," he goes, "I could argue with you and tell you you're wrong, or I can just say yes, sir, and do it my own way." And I was like, "Oh, I see what you're doing now." I figured you out. So, yeah. So I think you're right. Sometimes they just want to see if we're going to toe the line or if we're going to be argumentative, and I think that's a big part of it. So, what are some rewards though of being in middle management in your opinion?
Oh, um, what was it? I forget who I heard this quote from, but it was before you can become a leader, you have to be a leader.
Hmm.
And so I think, middle management, while it is a leadership position, it's a stepping ground for senior leadership. It gives you a chance to really become a senior leader before you actually get promoted into one of those roles. And so what does that even mean? It's like leading yourself, leading others, and what skills, what things do you have to learn and grow into to be able to do those things right there? One of Richard's books, I work for the Barrett Value Center, he talks about that in his book, the New Leadership Paradigm. Um, but what are the five attributes of leading self? I've got to be adaptable, right? I got to be able to learn, not just learn, but internalize those learnings, right? And then have to be able to apply those learnings to a vast array of places. I have to be able to cooperate. I have to be able to bond, right? And I have to be able to handle complexity. And once I handle those things, then I'm leading self, right? But then to get into leading others, I have to develop a little bit more. I have to become my true authentic self, right? Because who's been behind a leader who's not showing up, like a chotch, who's like, oh, you gotta work this Saturday, right? It's like, no, you become authentic and develop trust. And what is trust made of, right? That's made up of competence and character. So, you know, there's a lot of people with great character. I trust them in terms of being ethical and doing the right thing, but their competence might not be there. And then you have the vice versa. So, you start, once you understand these aspects, you start to grow into that and become that, and then you can get promoted into that. So
I
it's an
love
opportunity to grow is basically what's
I,
great about it, right?
I love that. I love that because I think you're right. If you're going to be a leader, you have to practice leadership, and it's not something that you can read in a book. You have to do it. And you have to do it at a small scale to be able to learn how to do it on a bigger scale. Because I think you're right. When you first get into it, you're like, holy cow, everyone's looking at me. I'm, it's all my fault if everything goes wrong. There's a lot of stress. And again, if you're not leading yourself first, right? You can't lead others. So you learn that in middle management to where you can, once you've mastered that, then you can take on more and more responsibility. That's one of the things I loved about the Navy is that when you enlist in the Navy, you are a doer. You are not a leader. But over time, as an enlisted sailor, you get more and more responsibility to the point you become a senior enlisted, like a chief petty officer. You're now in 100% leadership role. You go from 100% doer to 100% leader, but it happens over a period of 15 years. And so we gradually put you in these leadership roles where a lot of times in corporations or companies, we throw people into middle management jobs with very little training.
Mhm.
And so they're oftentimes we just throw them in the deep end and say, good luck. And I think people struggle with that.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great point. It's how are you preparing people for middle management? And what you just described is you have it baked in, right?
Mm, yeah.
It's you start here, and it's just natural. There was no real thing that you had to do. It's just like you're ready for it. And I bet because of that, you have a deep bench. The Navy probably had a deep bench to pull from because it's baked in. Everybody's going through these steps of doing more and more responsibility. And, there's probably a philosophy that gets taught along with it. Teamwork, not leaving anybody behind, the objective. Um, So definitely having it baked in. And I think for people running small companies, that would be an important thing to consider. It's like, oh, you've been doing this for yourself. Well, you've had, this employee working for you for 8 years. What have you done in those past 8 years to prepare them for middle management or to be able to take over some responsibility? You know, because what are they leading? There's so many words that are big and abstract, but it's like, what are they leading? Are they leading purpose? Are they leading process? Are they leading self? Are they leading others? And middle management doesn't necessarily have to lead all those four things, but maybe they're not even leading people. Maybe they're leading a process. But those are
Yeah.
the types of things as an entrepreneur you might want to keep in mind is okay, well, how am I preparing? I want to go on a 2 week vacation. How do I prepare for that, right?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think sometimes, especially in small business entrepreneurs, we go into business because we're an expert at something. We make a great pizza. In my case, I'm an expert in current transformers and this very unique little engineering thing that we do in our company. But if you hold on to things too tightly as an entrepreneur, as a startup founder, you're never going to grow because everything has to come to you. So developing people that can, take over parts of your business and letting go is the best way to be able to grow. And I think someone actually quoted me one time. It says you have to let go if you want to grow in as an
Mm,
entrepreneur, and that means developing your people, developing and giving them opportunities to take leadership positions within your company. I know my operations manager, the one that sort of runs the show at my company. I hired her originally at another company as an intern. So she was an intern and now she's my operations manager. So she has developed over time to be this phenomenal leader in my company. And I think that it's because I thought about, like, I've got to develop, I've got to teach, I got to give more and more responsibility to her. And so I think we need to do that as entrepreneurs. We need to identify and develop our leaders so we have that bench, as you were talking about.
mhm. One of my favorite quotes is from John Maxwell, and he says that um, a leader can magnify his impact by developing the leaders around him
Mm,
or her. So um, yeah, so when you're building people up, it magnifies you, and you get to take advantage of their leadership because we're all people, and just because you're a leader doesn't mean that you're an expert at all of those different aspects of leadership. And some people might compliment you by having strengths where you might not be as strong as a leader. You know,
yeah.
um, yeah, so that's great. As we were talking about what preparing people for this leadership position, I kind of was playing with this idea of like, well, what would be like that scenario where it's just you're put in middle management and it's like the worst, right? So
Mm,
negative visualization, basically. And so I'm thinking of like, imagine a company in transition. There's been a lot of recent turnover. There's no formal development programs. The team you have been asked to lead has been gutted. There's only skeleton staff left, and most of them don't have the skills and background to fulfill the responsibilities of the whole that's been left. You're an expert. You have the skills and background to do the work, but there's no way you can do all the work yourself. You need a team. Um, the business still might expect the same output as before with the gutted staff. None of your old responsibilities have been taken off your plate. Maybe there's potential unresolved conflicts between other departments. Um, there's not a unified process for executing organizational initiatives. There's a tight budget. You can't hire additional resources or contract out for specific expertise. I mean, imagine that, right? Is your first time going into middle management. That's kind of like, oh my God, that sounds awful, right? But on the other hand, imagine getting assigned a high performing team, a team that's well established, with all the necessary roles filled with qualified individuals. The business sent you through a formal training program. There's a mentor that works with you. You have the opportunity to discuss the challenges you're facing and help develop a shared philosophy with your senior leadership on how things should be handled. Any existing conflicts are addressed through facilitation or mediation, right? And you have enough processes and guardrails in place so that you can feel confident that you're being accountable to your role. I mean, so so I think as we're preparing people for those things, there's not going to be a one size fits all because each company is a little bit different. And whether you're managing a process or people or a purpose, you're going to have different responsibilities. But as we start to bake those things in, it just is part of your culture. Continuous learning, coaching, mentoring, right? Those things are important to be part of your organizational DNA. Um, you know, training programs that include communication skills, how to influence, how to use.
yeah.
I mean, communication is another one of those fuzzy words that means so many different things to different people. But it's that persuasion and influencing skills that you need to have, building up the social bank account with your other departments, so that when things get really hairy, you have the resilience of the relationship to see it through.
Yeah, I love when you just walk through that negative and positive visualization. that exercise is really good for thinking through, okay, so if you're an upper manager and you're promoting somebody in middle management, I think just what you talk through, like, put it go through that negative visualization, then do through a positive one. You're like, oh, am I missing some of the things on the positive side? Am I missing, oh, I haven't assigned a mentor, I haven't given them basic training, I they're adopting a team that's in a mess or in turmoil. I'm not a very caring manager, right? So I think if you go through that exercise and sort of look at the worst and the best case, and it actually would help you as a leader to make sure that deal with or address some of the problems on the negative side before you throw somebody in the deep end of the pool, what we were talking about earlier. So I really like that exercise, and just in sort of saying, oh shoot, it kind of opens up the idea of like, oh, there are other things to think about here.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think there's also like assessments people can take, like 360
Mhm.
assessments. So um, that gives you feedback. It lets you know where your gaps are, where people are wanting you to grow. Like people, even if you're not in a position of leadership, we're all basically leading someone, right? If you're leading yourself
Yeah,
or leading your family or leading your pets, whatever it is, right?
yeah, yeah.
So there's responsibility that individuals have to take as well. It's not, I think some people are like, oh, the company never trained me. And it's like, well, you got to do a little bit of lifting yourself. And I think that's potentially one way for organizations to identify potential leaders is people who are showing interest. What are they self-educating on those topics? How are they spending their, training budget if that's been allocated to them? Are they learning more of the craft of what your business does, or are they learning, communication skills, leadership skills in their spare time?
Yeah, I love that. I One of the things someone asked me, how do you identify people that you want to develop for leadership responsibilities? And I'm like, well, I'm looking for the people that their lights are on. That's the way I describe it. It's the best way I describe it is that they're looking around and they're curious and they're asking questions and they're studying and you can tell they're working to develop and trying to be better. And then the question is, well, then what do you do to help them develop? And one of the areas I like to do is to give people sort of a small project, like to be a leader in a project versus like a department first. So have a
Mhm.
small project where there's not a lot of risk, and that you can be there as a leader to be to help. If they fail, you're there to back them up, but to give them a chance to lead a small team, lead a small project, because I think you get a data point right there is that, one is, uh, you know, do they like it? Do they enjoy it? Sometimes I've had employees, I put them in those roles and they're like, I didn't care for that. I'd like to go back to what I was doing. Right. Or the other side
Mhm.
of it is like, I absolutely love it. This was great, and you see them knock it out of the park, and it's like this is the direction I want to head. And so, but I think we got to give people an opportunity to try leadership to see if it's something they're interested in, because not everybody wants to be a leader. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't go into leadership unless you really truly wanted it, because it is a lot of responsibility. It is, I was coaching a CEO recently, and I said everything is your fault. So no matter what, everything is your fault. And if you want to be in a job like that, then go ahead and take it. Now I do. I like it. I want the ball when there's 2 minutes left on the clock. I want the ball, right? That's just who I am as a personality. But not everybody has that personality. They don't want that risk. They don't want that pressure.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. You definitely have to want it, and I think you said something that's really hit home for me too. Is you have to care about people. You know,
Mm.
if you don't care about people, it's leadership is probably not for you because it's a people game. It's a people business. Because nobody comes to work like a drone and doesn't bring a little bit of the stuff going on in their life to work. And you have to understand sometimes they're not feeling well, sometimes they're not going to perform as well as they do. And you're like, what's going on with Bob?
Yeah.
Right. And so you have
Yeah.
to care about them on a deeper level than just and I think you also have to care about people in the sense that you want to develop them. Yeah, some people I've heard say, "Oh, I don't want to develop them because they'll just leave." Well, no, like especially a small company, when you follow industry standards, one, you make it easier to bring new people on because they're like this is what they're going to be trained in, and two, you're setting, as a small company, there's going to be limited career develop, right? There's career paths are going to be limited potentially in a smaller company. So not only are you not stifling their growth, you're giving them the opportunity to say, hey, I want to snipe people from that company because they do a great
Yeah.
job of preparing potential leaders, but you get to take advantage of their skill set while they're still with you.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Yeah, you're touching on something that's really important, and I talk about it as well. Is that it is a people business, and the thing is, what you just said is people are messy, right? People are going to bring in all their hangups and their concerns. They're going to bring their challenges at work, or challenges at home into work, and all these things. But also on the other flip side of the coin is that people are amazing. Like they
Mm,
will blow you away with their capabilities. They will if you give them under the right conditions, people will do more than you ever expected. And so you have to be able to deal with the messiness if you want to see the amazing part of it. And that's what I love about people. And that's what frustrates some leaders with people is that, yeah, but they're messy sometimes. Yeah, but they're also amazing sometimes. And that to
mm.
me is trying to find that amazing part is what gets me excited.
Yeah, and that what you just said right there even hit home for me again because um, as a leader, you have to be confident. And what I mean by that is you have to be confident in yourself that you feel good about praising somebody else's success. You're not insecure that, oh, I'm going to praise somebody, they're going to look better than me, or, I'm not getting the attention, I'm running this department. No, you want to praise your staff and recognize them for a job well done. Yes, it's their job. But you know what? Guess what? People like to be said thank you to. They like to be asked if they'll do something, not told to do something.
Yeah.
um, so yeah.
It's funny you said that because I had an employee who said to me, I was leaving a company, and she said to me, she said, "I'm sad you're leaving because you've been my favorite boss." And I said, "Out of curiosity, why am I your favorite boss?" And she said, "Because you say please and thank you." And I went,
Mm.
"That got me to be your favorite?" She said, "Most people don't do that." And I was like, "Wow, that's really sad." Just like you said, asking people to do something versus telling them to do something is it's a simple, it's little switch right there, but it makes a huge difference in the way people react to to being assigned tasks and what have you. So it's interesting. She noted that in me. You say please and thank you. I'm like other people don't say that. She's like no. I was like wow, that's sad.
Well, I had a, a boss one time, and he said the most amazing thing to me on my first day of the job. I was just floored, and it actually changed the way I show up with my relationship with my daughter, the way I've shown up in relationships with my wife. But what he said is, he said, Patrick, I want you to find your purpose in life, and I want you to find it here. And he's like, if you can't find it here, I want to help you get there. And and what that meant to me is a lot of what we've already said, but it was like, oh wow, like this person really does care about my personal development, that I become the best version of myself. And as leaders, that's what we want to do is we want to bring out the potential in our employees. And not just so that they do a good job at home, but so that they do good, I mean, not a good job at work, but so they do a good job at home so that they're high functioning individuals, and that actually contributes well to society because once we're taking really good care of ourselves, that makes the world a better place. People who are actually motivated about doing those types of things, well, one of the easiest ways is just to become the best version of yourself and help others along their path as well once you get yourself squared away.
Absolutely. That's such a great point. And I love that boss that said that because I think we need more bosses like that for sure. This has been fantastic, Patrick. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners right now?
There's an opportunity that we all have, and when I was younger, I wanted to be the best in the world. I was very competitive and such. As I've gotten older and my identity's gotten bigger to include more things, it's like, well, maybe being the best for the world is more important. And so, um, when when you're drawn to things, there's these stages of development that we go through, and for a lot of us, there's going to be an opportunity where we're just older, and we've been in a position for a long time, and maybe leadership's not our thing, but you know, we're still going to be asked to do it, whether we're either mentoring a younger employee, you don't have any real leadership, but you're training them. So developing these skills are just going to help you navigate your own life better, whether it's middle management, whether it's leading your family, or just being a good corporate citizen of the world.
I love that. I have a friend of mine, Coach Brubaker, who coached college lacrosse, and he said, I'm looking for players that'll be not the best player on the team, but the best player for the team. And that's what we need to do as a middle manager, being the best player for the team and what the team needs right now. And I love that shift. As you get older, you make that shift where it's not just about me. It's about what can I do for a team, for a group, for my family, for the country, for society. So I absolutely love that. Such a great message. Patrick, how can our listeners find out more about you and the work that you do?
Well, yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. It's under my name. I'm also on Twitter or X. Um, those would probably be the two main ways to find me, and I could also drop my email address for anybody who wants to reach out to me directly.
Fantastic. And we're going to go ahead and put links in the show notes for Patrick resources. And again, listeners, you're hearing this and you're thinking, wow, there's a lot of wisdom in what Patrick's saying. I'm in middle management too. I really didn't think of my role in this way. You might have questions for Patrick. So reach out to him, follow the links in the show notes below. You can DM him on Twitter or X, I guess. I'm still not used to calling it Twitter, by the way, or X, by the way. So yeah, you can DM him. We'll have his email address there. Reach out to him again if you have questions. He's in it. He's doing it. He's real live middle manager, and he is getting it done. He's got some great ideas and great thoughts on this. So I highly encourage you to reach out to him and learn more. Patrick, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing this important message about middle management.
Well, it was a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for holding this space. I've been listening to your podcast, and I'm learning a lot from it, and so I think it's just one of these avenues that we have to make the world a better place through influencing others, and it gives an opportunity for future generations, our own kids, that they don't have to figure out all this stuff from scratch, because they have these resources laid out in front of them.
Absolutely. That's why I do it. It's about giving back. It's a passion project for me. So, and yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again.
All right. Thank you, John.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.